Hello, good evening, and welcome to a new episode of Arguably the Reading Quest. I am Nishant. So, as the year 2025 is coming to an end, I thought of sharing with all of you some of the interesting books that I have read this year. So, I've divided this section into two parts. I'll start with non-fiction, and then I'll also share some of the fictions with you. So, close to 15 plus, good books that I have read this year. So, here we go. I'll start with the non-fiction first, as you can see here. And these are the fiction. Very interesting non-fiction. Of late, I have become very interested in biblical literature. So this is How Jesus Became God. This is from a prominent biblical expert, controversial Bible scholar, Bart D. Ehrman. So here, as a historian, he says, I'm no longer obsessed with the theological question of how God became a man, but with the historical question of how man became God. So very interesting read. One of the giants of literature, a conservative, a critique par excellence, C.S. Lewis, A Preface to Paradise Lost. Beautiful, beautiful book. One book on the life of Buddha. Old Path, White Clouds by Thich Nhat Hanh. Walking in the Footsteps of Buddha. A biography of Buddha, written in lyrical prose. I read Socrates. So this is a 7-volume book on philosophy and the history of Western philosophy, written by W. Casey Guthrie and published at Cambridge University. So this is the 3rd volume, Socrates. The first 2 volumes were the pre-Socratic 1 and pre-Socratic 2. So this I read back to back completely this year. So if you want to delve deeper into Socrates, after having read Will Durant and Bertrand Russell and Anthony Kenny, and the shorter introduction to Socrates by published at Oxford University Press, this is one book that needs to be read. A difficult book, but a very interesting one, and one of the most iconic books on the philosophy of science, written in the second half of the 20th century. And this is the 50th anniversary edition of that. The Structure of Scientific Revolution by Thomas Kuhn. A difficult one, but it was my long due project to read this book, published at Chicago University Press. So this one I read this year. When it comes to understanding of Greek tragedy and Greek culture, the philosophy of the Greek people, H.D.F. Kitto needs no introduction. So H.D.F. Kitto, the Greeks. So a very lucid introduction to, a totally new conception of what human life was for in the Greece. So by a classicist, H.D.F. Kitto. A lucid read, all of us can read this one. The next book, Hannah Arendt, The Origins of Totalitarianism. This is an expanded edition and published at the Library of America. Beautiful, beautiful hardbound cover you can see. It was my long due project. I finished it this year. A difficult read, but quite enriching. So it took me close to 3 months to finish it. And this is a annotated edition. Library of America didn't publish it. It was published this year itself, in the month of June. So I immediately ordered it, and it took me 3 months to finish it. I finished it this month itself. Another interesting book is The Great Disciples of the Buddha. The Great Disciples of the Buddha, published at Wisdom Press and edited by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Bhikkhu Bodhi has edited multiple series on Buddhist study on this press, Wisdom Press. So the great disciples of Buddha, their work, their legacy, their lives, and their place in the Sangha. So be it Sariputra, be it Mahalibhamanna, be it Anand, Rahul, be it Daku Angulimal, and the female disciples of Buddha. So a very lucid introduction. Anyone can read this, for beginners as well. And then this is a classic of psychology and wisdom literature. So the Red Book by Carl Jung, the Red Book by Carl Jung. So I bought it in the year 2024. I finished reading it this year. So these are close to 10 books on books of non-fiction that I finished. Now fiction, I read many path-breaking fiction this year, many ultra-contemporary writings, path-breaking, genre-breaking fiction. And the very recent one that I finished reading is Distant Light by Antonio Moresco. Antonio Moresco is an Italian novelist. Distant Light, it questions our own place in the universe and what does the other mean, the other, and the concept of alienation. So this is one book, a titan of French Enlightenment. Denis Diderot, Memoirs of a Nun. I made a separate video on it as well, Denis Diderot, Memoirs of a Nun. One Victorian literature of late, I have read a lot of George Eliot. This is Silas Marner. This is one of her books that she herself liked the most. So it's the story of a adoptive father and an adopted abandoned girl, and how their relationship was interwoven in the Victorian society. And it combines pastoral, symbolic, legendary element with rooted local settings. Beautiful. Two books that I would like to show side by side. One is Simple Passion and one is Getting Lost. So it's the story of Annie and Rox and her emotional and her emotional relationship with 2 years relationship with a married foreigner. So this is written in a novel form and this was written in a diary. So initially it was in the diary form, that is Getting Lost, and novel form it's a novella, a very short novella, you can see. So I read these two this year. She is awarded Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 2022. I read one of her writing that year itself, that is The Years. The Years, and this year I finished reading these two more. Her works are deeply linked with sociology. Again, going back to existential fiction, that is my perennial favorite. And I don't think I'll ever be tired reading existential fiction. Saul Bellow, Mrs. Samler's Planet. I'll make a separate video someday on this book. Samler's Planet. Survivor of Holocaust, haunted by the memories of his literal escape from the grave, is living out his days in New York. An intellectual who once thrived on the great works of Western literature and philosophy, he now occasionally lectures at Columbia University. He calls himself a registrar of madness. So this is one book. Another great fiction that I finished reading this year is Slizard Bobley's Kafka's Son. Kafka's Son is a fictionalized autobiography of Franz Kafka. So Slizard Bobley, a giant of Hungarian literature, he committed suicide in the year 2014. And this book is published at Siegel under the section Fiction and Jewish Study. Siegel Books is doing terrific work when it comes to publishing some of the literary giants recently, be it Laszlo Krasznahorkai, be it Slizard Bobley. Awesome work. I also read a lot of Elegy this year, the Penguin Book of Elegy. Please don't get me wrong, I didn't mean to say that I read this book back to back, because this is not in my style to read a book of poetry, an anthology of poetry back to back. When I said I have read it copiously and I've enjoyed it immensely. As per my own will and discretion, as much as I can, without any particular order, without any sequence. So I just open a book anywhere in between the pages and I read it as much as I like. So I enjoyed reading this, a Penguin Book of Elegy. I think all of the poetry lovers must have this book. Another book, and Penguin published it this year and I grabbed it immediately. It's the Greek and the Latin lyric work. The Penguin Book of the Greek and the Latin lyric verse, edited by Christopher Childers. So this is one book that I enjoyed, the most from the classical age of Greek and Latin period. So guys, these are some of the books, both fiction and non-fiction, that I enjoyed reading most this year. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've still not liked, shared and subscribed my YouTube channel, arguably the Reading Quest, please do that. If you're a new subscriber, please do say a hello to me. I'll try replying to each one of your comments individually. Happy reading, guys.